Picture this. You walk into a big city pub for the Six Nations, the door staff are grumpy, the sound is off, and the rugby crowd is treated like an afterthought. Most people shrug and go home. Dan Tanner built a movement. From Reading Abbey to Vancouver and Toronto, Dan turned watch parties into a community engine through 99 Social. He learnt the craft in the UK pub trade, carried it across the Atlantic, and turned social media into a flywheel that fills rooms and keeps rugby soul alive. His playbook is simple and powerful. Find a venue, set the standard, make the belonging the product. Today, we get the origin story, the operating system, and the challenge to every listener who says, there is nowhere near me to watch the game. By the end of this episode, you will have the checklist to change that in 7 days. Welcome to the business end, Dan.
Thanks a lot.
Welcome, Dan.
Happy to cheers. Happy to chat with both of you.
Great stuff. So let's dive straight into the first question. Before we get into pubs, parties, and playbooks, let's talk about your rugby DNA and what values or habits from the game show up in the work. Well, everything that you do.
Well, it's the same as a rugby club, really. Sort of no man, woman, or child left behind. Like everybody's welcome. Yeah, we encourage people that have never experienced the sport before to be brought along, and we try and make sure any venues that we take on can have a license for families so that young people can come as well. I mean that's the main thing from rugby as well. And I read a lot about rugby, and I'm a rugby fan, and I have favourite players and buy the jerseys and everything like everyone else. And you think of as a grassroots player, sort of how can you, the whole thing about leaving the jersey better than when you first put it on. And for me, my work. I hope that my work's been giving me a chance for me to do that without being I was never going to be a professional player. So I get to do this, and that's my part, and hopefully I leave at the end of it when I eventually stop doing this. I've left the community and the game better than when I first decided to start up my little project.
Absolutely.
We've certainly done that, Dan. I mean, what you've grown is quite phenomenal, and I see the impact here in North America, and I'm sure it is the same elsewhere. So, full credit to you. Let's go back to your first arriving in Vancouver. You walked into a pub for the Six Nations, as we mentioned. Grumpy door staff, no audio, $20 cover charge. What clicked for you in that moment? What emotion did you follow through with?
Well, it's not there any longer. It was an Irish pub called Doolan's, which was quite well known in Vancouver. It's where Michael Bublé first started playing his Thursday night sort of jam sessions before he became famous, and was the only pub in Vancouver to be showing the rugby. First of all, they wouldn't let me in because I didn't have ID with me. I didn't have a proof of age, even though I've looked 30 years old since I was 7.
They just didn't want you to come in, Dan.
They just didn't want me to come in, no. So I went home and got my passport and came back, and it was Super Saturday, so all 3 of the games were on. And as I mentioned to you guys before, the staff were pretty grumpy. The doorman was pretty grumpy. Paid my $20 to get in, which I didn't really understand why. Further later on, I'd find out that the pubs paid around $6,000 for the rights to show Six Nations, the whole tournament. So the $20 was just, but at the time, because there's no transparency, I kind of felt a little cheated and didn't realise why there was such a high cost on the rugby, like many people. And then when the final game came around, I think that year it was England-France, they turned the sound off. And when I asked why they turned the sound off, the exact quote I got from the bartender was, "The normal customers are coming in now."
Wow.
And I'm like, well, I bought a breakfast and I'm on my 5th pint. You mean the normal customers that only spend $10 are coming in, rather than this whole crowd that have all spent between 30 and 50 each? And so I watched it, didn't kick up too much of a fuss because I'd only just arrived in the country and didn't want to be the fastest deportation in Canadian history. So we just watched the game with my partner at the time, and we left. And I left pretty grumpy, and I'd already made friends with a couple of bar owners in town, and I'd already done quite a successful or set up quite an successful event for England football supporters. And so I'm like, well, I'm going to do this for rugby as well. So I went away and did my research on pubs in Vancouver, and I got going on it.
Fair play.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, obviously, this like leads into you probably answered the next question, is when you moved from Canada in 2010, how did that reshape your relationship to rugby and to work? It sounds to me like you've had a penny dropping moment or a light bulb moment in your head, basically.
Well, to start with, it was quite hard to get. I come from a management background. I had 10 years of management experience in hospitality in the UK, and because I didn't really know anybody in Vancouver, it was very hard to get a management job in the city. You know, it's kind of like you have to build up your clout and you have to build up your connections before anyone takes you seriously. So you're really almost forced into an entrepreneurial moment. You know, the first sort of 2-3 years you're in country. So this kind of pushed me that way. The one thing that the negative for me was the fact that if I was going to live in Canada, I was never going to get my rugby day again. You know, like when you wake up at 9-10, go for a greasy spoon somewhere, and then end up on the bus to the Madstad after like 3 or 4 Guinness at the 3 Guineas. You know, like turn up at 2 o'clock before the game, 3 few more Guinness and a pie, at the stadium, and get cheering, go back. The whole like Saturday or Sunday rugby thing, because the times are all different and it's always mornings. But then again, that was a hidden positive, because when you want to promote rugby or soccer in this country, you go to a pub owner that, if you like their venue and you like you like the attitude and the personality of the staff and the owner, you can say, well, you're paying your rent anyway. Like, why don't you just open a couple of hours early and I'll bring you 50 to 150 people or 200 people, and you extend your earning potential. So a lot of the times, if the publican was, or the owner was clued up, it was that European sports are a pretty easy sell if you can prove a crowd to them. It extends their potential.
How many would you bring to how many on average you bring to a game, to say for a pub in Vancouver, for example?
Obviously, it depends on the game, but on average, it's around 75 to 100.
Wow.
But the events we've done have been from 50 people to the biggest one we've done was 850.
Wow. 850. What was that for? You don't mind me asking?
Australia All Blacks Rugby World Cup final.
Wow, 850. Some crowd, yeah.
That's a game changer for the establishment, especially as you mentioned there. It's at a time that they may not have been scheduled to be open, in the morning. So I mean, that's free money almost.
Well, the other thing is that in North America, you'll probably be aware, Fitzy, and maybe Marie knows about this as well. Like their sports, like ice hockey, NFL, people don't really go to pubs for those because there's so many games. They might go to a big venue for like the Stanley Cup final, or even the Stanley Cup final could be, it's a best of 7, so those games can go up there. But people will probably go to a bar for the Super Bowl, but everybody really watches these sports at home. So the whole pub movement and the whole sort of social movement of sports and those bar sales really only still exist in, I'm programmed to say soccer, but football, association football and rugby, those bar sales only really exist in those sports still. And it's amazing the amount of hospitality owners that don't clue into this.
See that all the time, Dan. See it all the time. There's, 2 quick points as well before I know Fitz is going to answer the next question. Number one is, when you bring, what's the mix? If you bring 75 people, most of them expats, or are they local Canadians?
It's a good mixture. It's I would say it's predominantly expats, depending on the event. But I'd say maybe a 60-40 split, 60% expats, sort of 40% Canadian.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
then we do a Canada Sevens event with the Guinness Six Nations morning. The Canadian end, is probably higher.
Yeah. I mean, it's fair to say you're probably bringing like a grassroots kind of rugby club into a pub in Vancouver, effectively. You bring a grassroots club.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
the expats are incredibly important because they're the ones that set the tone and set the atmosphere and set the sort of friendliness and the banter and the camaraderie of the day. And Canadians are, I've learned over the last 15 years in rugby and also in football, that they're hungry for that. When the World Cups come around, rugby or football, they all want you to know they've got an English granny or an Irish auntie, that's or a South African cousin, and that's the reason they're wearing the jersey, because they want to be involved, because they're very attracted to sort of the tribalism and the fun, of the European sports crowd.
That's brilliant, and what a way to find a community within a new city if you are an expat. So let's talk about the name 99 Social. How did that originate, and what did you want the brand to signal to a casual fan walking in off the street?
Well, I've always been pretty good at marketing and sort of brand development, even though I'm not sure I always realised that. One of my ex-employers would call me the namer. I named a couple of his venues for him, but I couldn't think of a name for. I wanted to brand and label the rugby mornings as something so we could market it, but I couldn't think of anything for maybe 3 or 4 months. And in a last sort of desperate attempt to figure something out, I just Googled rugby stories and pressed return. The first story that came up was the story of the 99 call with Willie John McBride and the British and Irish Lions. And reading the story on Wikipedia, you can it was one of these stories on Wikipedia where you read it and you can see the scene in a changing room or in a committee situation where the original call was going to be 999 after the sort of British emergency number, and someone just piped up. By the time you've got those 3 numbers out, it's all going to be over. And until he shortened it to 99. And obviously, for people that I know you two are well versed with this, but for people that don't know, the 99 call was for a South African Lions tour where the South Africans were known to try and target and sort of try and cripple the 9s and 10s. So if the Lions saw anything untoward like that, they would call 99. And your job as a Lion would be to grab the nearest Springbok to you and just start filling them in. And just to show the Springboks that the Lions weren't going to be messed around. And they did the call once. After that, whatever, it wasn't World Rugby at the time. Whether they're pretty IRB at the time, called them in and said, look, if that ever happens again, we're going to cancel the tour and we'll send you home. It was a one and one time only, and the Springboks were put back in their place a little bit, and the Lions created a legend. And I love that story because for me it didn't. And some people might say, oh, so you've named your rugby brand after violence. I'm like, well, you've never watched rugby before. Nobody died, and maybe somebody got a fat lip, but for me, it shows the pure sort of togetherness and camaraderie of rugby, and that no one's left alone, and no one's, everybody's all in, So I took the 99, and obviously they were rugby socials, so I ended up calling the brand 99 Social.
Yeah.
And we later shortened it to 99S because it looked better on a brand, on a logo. And then we just went from there, and it's obviously people see the logo and see the name, and especially Canadians don't often resonate with it or know where it's come from. But I find part of the allure of the brand and part of the fun of the brand is telling them and then finding out about the story. It's always been a good talking point, for people discovering what we do and the events that we do.
Yeah, and there's a great point there about the. I was going to say, I hope I'm beating you to it, Fitzy, about bringing people together and no one being in isolation. You made that point, and obviously being an expat is obviously quite important for expats, and so
Yes.
there is a deeper meaning. I don't know if that was intended or not, but there's a deeper meaning to the name for sure.
Well, I don't know if at the time I understood what I was actually
Fair
doing,
enough.
what the impact of what I was doing. And I'm sure I entirely understood that at the time, but then we often don't when we start passion projects and start things that we love. Like we just do them because we think it's fun and cool, and we want to do and be better. Like so. But we don't often understand that it can have we don't understand the decent impact it can have on an individual. But I knew from the start that I always wanted the events to be welcoming, and a chance for people to learn about rugby and a chance to have access to rugby. That was always the game plan from sort of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like a rugby club at home, and you walk through the door, and it doesn't matter whether you're a member or not. You're welcome. There's a community there, and that comes across in spades from your stories, what I know about it, and what I've been told. There's an opportunity for whomever to come in and be part of something that's fun and bigger than themselves, and to meet people. So it's a great job.
So onto social media and building networks, because this is quite fascinating. Perhaps I'm going to put the next question a little bit differently to perhaps what we've looked at. I mean, so basically, to get together 75 to 100 people to various events around Canada, what kind of methodology did you have behind that to build it? What sort of stuff gets interest, build people together, and what turns people the other way, would you say?
Initially, it's a man by man, sort of person by person sort of mentality, and planning. We generally do things sort of minimum of 2 or 3 months out, so people know what's coming down the pipe. Whereas a lot of hospitality companies, they'll do everything a month before, and they always put quite aggressive targets on their managers or people that organise events. To you need 100 people, you need 200 people. I don't stress myself with getting 200 people for an event. I stress myself on finding every individual person. If one person comes to one of my events and they have a great time, next time they come back, they're bringing 3 with them. So if I find anyone, we search through sort of like the expat Facebook groups and social media, advertise on those. Anyone makes a comment about rugby, we send them the link to the page. If you ever want to come watch a game, here's the place to come. And I concentrate on the sort of brick by brick, like just building individuals up and making sure I'm well known in groups.
Yeah.
So I meet so many Irish people in Vancouver when we're out and about, and they hear my name, like, "Oh, you're that guy that's constantly posting on our Irish in Vancouver pages." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's me."
Yeah.
I've never met them before. They've seen my posts for the last 10 years, 10 years or so. So it's just piece by piece, really, and just not like any way possible. It's social media, it's word of mouth, it's leaning on rugby clubs. It's kind of what I like to call give a shit marketing.
Yeah.
Like people know you can't. There's no. I think I commented on. I think your post the other day on LinkedIn. Like, there's no opposition for authenticity. People know that you're a rugby fan and you're setting up events and you're legitimate, and like they tend to gravitate towards the events, and people stick with you. I've got people that have been coming to my events for a decade.
Yeah, and they followed people down as well. They followed people. So just to put this into context, what year did you do your first event?
2010.
So if you put that into context, then I mean, like LinkedIn was probably, it was out, but people probably weren't using it that much. Facebook was probably a bit more popular, but it's nothing. I mean, iPhones, you basically built a network from people interaction, I presume, rather than social media. And then social media is just, amplified that. I mean, to just as well put it into context, you told me, and we saw it the other day, you posted something on Facebook, and what'd you get, like 500,000 impressions or 500,000 clicks on it?
Yeah, half a million views. Yeah,
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. So what you do an event and
Yeah.
you got 75 people in the room, and this is the power of social media, and then you post it on social media, and then you get a couple 100,000 people looking at it. It's crazy, the power of it.
yeah,
Incredible.
yeah. It is.
So you've worn the rugby influencer label and taken the heat that comes with it. What's your moderation philosophy? What do you ignore, delete, or engage?
I've always really took pride in the fact that it's an independent brand posing as a professional brand. You know, like I like to think our posts look like we know. Well, I say we. I always say with the royal we because it's. I don't know why, because it's the brand. You know, like but there's no. I've got no team behind me. It's literally just me. But the. I'd like to think the brand looks professional, and we hold our own with sort of bigger entities. Champagne Rugby and ruck.co.uk that like it's their full-time thing, like and try and stay gloriously professional with an amateur from an amateur perspective, so we don't moderate a whole lot, but if people cross the lines and people are sort of wholly negative, then I don't, I can block them or we'll delete their comments. I don't really stand for trolls regarding women's rugby or commenting on women's athletic shortcomings or how their bodies look or comments like that. That's just got no place in our brand or the game or society, to be honest. So those people will always get blocked from our brand. But the problem that the general public will have with me is that I don't care.
That's incredibly powerful.
You can cancel me. You can unfollow me. I can have one follower. I don't care. I'm here to do something. I know my values. I know my morals. I know my integrity. I know. I know why I create social media every day. I know why I create events all year, every year, and I don't have a lot of time for the casual parasite that doesn't follow us, that hasn't commented on anybody else, but will come in with a heap of abuse or negativity on that. That's their first contribution to us. Those people sometimes get blocked. But there's not really a lot of moderation. If a prime example of that is that the post actually got 500,000 views and 6-figure engagement is a post where I say that the Springboks were going to defeat the All Blacks at Eden Park, because from the team sheets and from the last few games, I felt the Springboks were going to win, and so I've got 500,000 views worth of general abuse, which I've gladly worn and left up there. So like, I'm not a. Well, I'm in the spirit of the game,
Yeah. Well, I think, and there's two things that come across very strongly there. One, your passion, and I mean, that comes across in your work. It's very clean, it's very professional looking. It's very impressive that it's the raw we that's producing all that stuff, as opposed to a more expansive team, because it certainly looks like many people are working diligently to produce the stuff that you do. Congratulations there. And the second thing is what you've described in terms of a moderation philosophy is basically good manners that you would find in any community, or the vast majority of community rugby clubs around the world. Certainly, like I'm sure we all grow up in there. Don't be a dickhead, and you can have banter and it's fun, and express your personality, but don't be offensive, and we're all going to have a good time here. And that, I think, is very cool and very, very empowering.
Thanks.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, come on, Dan. I mean, the poster you got like 500,000 people like abusing you. Do you ever get slightly agitated? Do you ever like think, oh, could they just shut up for a minute? Or do you think, wow, look at this is going viral?
Oh, I absolutely get agitated. I'm your classic grumpy, miserable Brit. I'll get 1,000 compliments, but that one old guy comes on and gives me a bunch of shit that day, and that's the guy I remember.
Yeah. How do you deal with that though? How do you deal with that?
Well, I have banter as well. I've got some pretty standard responses to people, which I thoroughly enjoy. I often comment, I'd really appreciate your input. Do the police know that you're back on the internet now? things like that are pretty much a standard comeback. I've used them many times. Yeah, I just people know I have a thing for but for boomers and their overall negativity. I think it was the guy that is one of the owners of the Chicago Hounds. I read a piece in the press from him. I think he said that sometimes the development of rugby, certainly in America, the fans can get in the way of themselves with their negativity, which I completely agree. The short answer to that is, I can get agitated, but at the end of the day, it's
It's just words.
you just keep moving forward. That's the best use of my keyboard and my mouse was to create 25,000 followers on Facebook and 30,000 on Instagram. So if the best use of their day is to be negative about what I'm doing, then
yeah,
gives
you more clicks as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it does indeed. So let's talk about going back to your move. You call rugby anti-loneliness infrastructure. Can you give us one story of someone who found belonging because of the parties that you built?
Well, I don't really have an individual story. There's quite a few. I just from our events. Look, I pride myself on the connectivity of them. So lots of people have met partners at our events, and boyfriends and girlfriends, and lots of people have made friends for life. We had a young Irish lad come to one of our events pretty early on his own. Drinks with us, drinks with some other people, and then in 2016 when I went to the island, he never really followed rugby back home, but he was a bit disillusioned with football, and he heard that rugby was a way of making friends. And then in 2016 when I went to Ireland All Blacks in Chicago as press, I bumped into him in one of the pubs down there. He was there with people that he'd met at our event in Vancouver, which was
Amazing,
huge for me, but stuff like that. We connect people with rugby clubs, and they're still playing now. And however, I don't limit the communication or limit what the brand can do or what the surroundings of the brand can do. If I can introduce you to a rugby club, we'll do it. If you need boots, and I can scoop together some money and we'll get you boots. If someone needs some new friends in a new town, but you not really want to play rugby, then come. We'll get hold of you. Come sit with us. Come sit at the table. Just anything we can do to push the movement and push rugby and better the individual. I think rugby has an enormous untapped power that we're not using. We're also focused on professional pathways and academies, and the next Johnny Wilkinson and the next Perry Baker, and all these things, which is important, which is very important. But I hope we don't forget that it's built on grassroots. You need people to go to those games. You need people to watch those stars. You need people to buy their jerseys and buy the beers and, pack the stands, pack the pubs. Just rugby just has an enormous power for inclusivity and for friendship and to better the individual by including them in the group. I had a chat with Fitzy sort of before the recording this podcast about inclusive rugby clubs. Nothing but positivity for inclusive rugby clubs. The more people playing, the better in any way, shape, or form. If that's how they want to gather to play rugby, I'm more than for it. But the little part of me, the little part that I explained, there's a little part of me that is a little sad, because I'm like, well, yeah, with like a spoiled or with a fat lip, like we would have included you, like we wouldn't have turned you away. You could have come and played with us, like we don't care if you're gay, straight, tall, fat, thin, like we would have welcomed you with open arms, but people have felt the need to create inclusive rugby clubs, and a lot of positivity and momentum has come from things like the Bingham Cup and the international, I think the IGR, International Gay Rugby. It's blossomed into this huge brand and movement, which is nothing but good for the game. I hope it wasn't created. I hope it was created for their comfort and their passion, and it wasn't created because they felt that they weren't welcome at sort of what they might call heterosexual or mainstream rugby clubs, because that's absolutely not the case,
Absolutely. And would you say that, you say about the question, the anti-loneliness infrastructure and finding a sense of belonging, would you say it gave you, Dan Tanner, a sense of belonging?
Like 110%. Like I can't.
So you the biggest example of the question?
Well, I came to Vancouver and was straight away playing rugby and stuff, and but I've been out of sort of playing rugby now for maybe 2 or 3 years, and rugby's still a way for me to connect and meet my friends. And yeah, to be honest, it's I need to defeat medical science, I think, to have the time to give back to rugby what it's given to me.
Excellent, yeah.
Well, I think in less or greater part, I think we all fulfill that way, and you verbalised it
absolutely
very accurately there. I mean, it's such a great game, and so many lessons and so many friendships made along the way. Let's change tack slightly. If you could set up one funding rule for rugby unions, what guaranteed percentage would you ring fence for community clubs, and how would that be measured?
I don't know if I would necessarily have funding rules. Do you mean sort of with respect to the sort of the unions giving them money, or suggestions for club?
Yeah, so if you take any particular union, it's got X amount of dollars or pounds or euros that it generates. What percentage of that pie would you like to see ploughed back into community clubs, and what kind of things would you like that to see that spent on to help foster and grow the grassroots game?
Well, firstly, there's nothing more important than the grassroots, unless you want to start building houses without foundations and see how that works out. I don't recommend you start that real estate company, or development company. It's not a question of dollars. It's a question of lessons, and it's a question of entrepreneurialism. The clubs are not taking advantage of all their opportunities right now. I've not seen, to be honest, with the exception, and I'm sure there are others, but just in my sphere, Reading Abbey in the UK make a hell of a lot of opportunity from their club out of rugby time. They do their youth program good, and I think they have a motorbike fair rally there, and they do a Fat Boy Sevens in the summer, and fireworks displays, and they look to maximize the potential of the club. But a lot of clubs don't, and the two problems with that are a core base of sort of founders of rugby who aren't ready to move on to innovation and entrepreneurialism, to grow the club or to keep the club going and grow the club. And partly our volunteers are drying up and they're not being replaced. And we're not teaching people that the grass doesn't cut itself and the fields don't line themselves, and the lights don't turn on from a free rugby power station down the road, and the jerseys aren't donated by by brands every year. You know, like it seems to be like, certainly in Canada, there seem to be like families at each clubs that have been like the backbone of the club. And these families are getting older, having babies, getting married, and they're not being replaced. So to answer your question, from a union perspective, I would just, funding wise, I would have an officer or a position that's main focus, he or she's main focus is to visit clubs in their area. They've got proven business credentials, proven, rugby knowledge and passion, and they're respected by the community. And they're basically in charge of assisting clubs with maximising their income, taking advantage of opportunities, everything from events outside of the season to maximising their player base and recruitment. Just they're there to support and guide the clubs into more income and through more opportunities. And I think that way, and from there, as I've discussed several times with Fitzy, I think if a guide were to be made of sort of, a rugby club best practices and best management guide from the examples of, say, Enniskillen RFC, they've done recruitment really well and they've got 5,000 members. They're a case study. Red Abbey, a great out of season events, they're a case study. And so, like, different clubs are used to create a dossier, create a guide, and then clubs have that to fall back on and be inspired by, in order to run their own clubs and push their own clubs forward. And also for them this officer from the union to advocate on clubs' behalves for better facilities, for fields with local authorities. We just right now, rugby union is just missing its potential at a grassroots level, and I'm marginally afraid for the future.
Yeah,
I think you've
absolutely.
really touched upon a fantastic idea, and a very simple one, which all good ideas are. Doesn't matter what part of the world there are successful examples, whether it's just in part or in whole, and gathering that information and disseminating it can be the difference between a club being successful or struggling. And I think you also touched upon a really, really good point there with volunteers, especially. The world has changed in our generation's lifetime in terms of there being a lot more pools for people's time, especially those younger than ourselves. And we've got to compete in that space. And having a framework to support volunteers so they're not having to figure it all out for themselves, that they can give the time that's appropriate to them, even if it's small or large, can really help rugby club or any organisation be as good as it can be, as successful as possible. So no, I think that's a really, really smart idea, Dan.
Yeah, I was going to add to that as well. One of the biggest things that I see perhaps and this doesn't just go at grassroots clubs as well, it goes to all clubs, is I don't think they engage the players enough, the ex-players, and I feel that they should do. And I don't actually think they engage the fans enough as well. So or supporters, you think that there's families that have been involved in clubs for, 50 odd years, and then the next generation aren't interested. Well, they should be looking at legacies and things like that, and really trying to get the community going, like legacy boards for, my great grandfather used to support this club and look at this, and like things like that. They need to do that. They need to get more involved in the business community. They definitely need to get involved in the ex-players, because the ex-players are the ambassadors, and you're quite right. You need like a kind of like an agent, perhaps from one of the governing bodies, to be able to speak to the local governments as well. But yeah, no, I agree with everything you're saying, Dan. Some great points. So moving on to the next question, North America growth is a bit of a hot topic at the moment. So, but what did the Vancouver Sevens and the Chicago Test weekends get right that others should copy?
Well, I don't know if the Canada Sevens is an entirely good example, because that was kind of they've got the stadium, they've got the social media. That it's just was almost sort of like cookie cutter given to them. I mean, they've done okay, but I mean, it hasn't, in the years they've had it, they haven't grown the capacity for some reason. It's always been around about the same. When I would have expected at least sort of 10-15% growth. But with regarding the 2016 All Blacks Ireland weekend, it was a breakthrough event. The structure of the event was, I'm sure you two know, but for the purpose of this, was the USA played the Maori All Blacks on the Friday night at a smaller stadium outside of town, and then obviously Ireland All Blacks was at Soldier Field on the Saturday, sold out capacity. It was branded correctly, the rugby weekend. The games were all laid out. The social media was solid. They had stuff going on outside the stadium, and they did it right. They placed the game in the correct stadium. They placed the game in the correct city. Chicago sort of soaked in Irish history there, and settlers and things like Irish settlers there and stuff. Obviously, Chicago's a hub, so it's easy for international people to come into. And that weekend, it just turned out that the Cubs won the World Series that weekend as well. So it turned into like one of these weekends where, if you look back on it and you missed it, you'd kind of want to be teleported into the weekend. It was this sort of turned into this sort of massive sort of historical weekend. The Ireland beating the All Blacks for the first time, the Cubs winning the World Series in this huge city of Chicago, fans everywhere. They got everything right. And from there, the ball was dropped and ball was knocked on. There was no momentum from that. What should have come from that, what should have been a yearly sort of an event, that that maybe eventually stretched into two, but it didn't. The event obviously had people involved in it that were rugby fans, because I'll always harp on about authenticity. Like, you can't. You give me you two say, "Oh, Dad, we've opened up a pub in Ireland, London, Texas. Like, we've opened up a pub. We're going to pay you 150 grand a year and want you to knock rugby and football out of the park." And I can do that. Like, but you give me 150 grand and he's like, "I want you to be our NFL and ice hockey ambassador and our food critic." Like, that's not. Like, I can't justify that. And when you can't pay people to promote a sport successfully, or I really think you've got to have some passion in the game in order to be the maximum marketing power and the maximum event power you can be. If you got no knowledge or love for the thing you're promoting or marketing, I don't think you can do the maximum job possible.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, you can't sell anything if you don't believe in it, basically.
No.
Yeah.
No. You're a professional liar at that point.
Absolutely. And Fitzy, were you involved in that game in 2016?
No, but I was involved with the USA All Blacks game, I think in 2014, Soldier Field, which was an incredible experience. And interestingly enough, it was the first time an NFL stadium had been used for a rugby game, and it was sold out, and it was a great success. But whoever was dealing with the Soldier Field staff has said, "Look, you really need to make sure you've got plenty of beer on tap. Rugby people like to drink." And I said, "Oh, don't worry, we're the NFL. we know how to do events," and they generally do. However, by half time, there was an emergency call put out to the local breweries and pubs. We need. They'd run out of beer, so they got it sorted, in fairness to them, so that the panic was averted. But just goes to show you, it's a different crowd.
Yeah.
Apparently, on the Canada Sevens weekend, there's more beer drank at BC Place than the entire BC Lions CFL season.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Does not surprise me, and it's a great business model. So I feel you've probably touched upon answers in part for this question, but I'll ask it anyway. If you had the power, what is one thing you would do to help grow the game in North America?
I would start with a full audit of USA Rugby and Rugby Canada's expense accounts. I would hold unions and the governing bodies to a higher level, and I would make them more transparent. I would make them connect with grassroots clubs more. I would make them understand that grassroots are everything, and they don't get their players without grassroots. They don't get their funding without grassroots. It's always been quite I'm not sure the word for it, politely, frustration of mine that they'll use the numbers of us signing up for local clubs to get their governmental grants to pay their salaries, but that's where the care for the local player stops. I think there needs to be the short answer is a reconnection to grassroots players and clubs. It's very apparent that and from some recent research, I know this is the same in the US as well. It's an uncomfortable them and us relationship, and grassroots leaders feel undervalued and undersupported, and that's been for 15 years now since I've been in this country and aware of the connections, and I just don't think that's good enough. Especially as if I was earning a six-figure salary from rugby, I'd be elated. I'd do everything I could. I'd work weekends. I'd work my fingers to the bone to provide for my community, but the attitude seems to be just to sit on our hands and just do the bare minimum. Sometimes not even that. I don't know. It's just a very, very frustrating situation here, and I want grassroots. I want the governing bodies to. I want the governing bodies to do better, because I don't think they truly understand what they're doing currently, and in that case, get out your job. Quit your job and give it to someone that does.
Yeah, I think there's a big disconnect across the world with governing bodies and the fans and even the players at the moment. So, that's not just North America. I think it's most countries.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'll agree. It's just particularly bad.
Yeah.
In the USA and Canada, like for example, Reading Rugby Club in Reading had a massive sort of financial emergency where they had to have their club repaired from a bunch of damage. And they managed to fundraise some of it. And then I was told the RFU helped them fundraise for some of it, which was a £250,000 bill for the repairs. There is no department, human being, entity involved in USA Rugby or Rugby Canada that would make that happen. I put everything I got on them not making that happen, and I've not seen anything to make that happen. Our insurance packages as players are garbage. Like this, the one thing they do need to take care in, and it's they're garbage. They're more to protect the venue owner and the officials more than the player. I do understand your point about all of them, but like just Canada and the USA are particularly bad. And I just read that USA are going to be given 250 million over the next few years to get ready for the Rugby World Cup. That terrifies me. Like I hope there's some oversight and some as a panel from World Rugby that they have to tick off and sign away the expenses there and how that's going to be spent, because I'm yet to see anybody that works for USA Rugby or Rugby Canada spend any money that I've been enamored with, shall we say?
Yeah. So it's about accountability, isn't it? And a bit more
100%
transparency. But the
yeah.
burning question is, how do you get that? Like, because they're not just going to say, I'm doing a bad job and I resign. They're going to hang on to those jobs. How do we force the governing bodies to be a bit more, I suppose responsible isn't a word, but to be a bit more transparent and reconnect with the fans? How do we force that?
Well, I think the question is, why aren't they transparent?
Well, Yeah, that they're not transparent in the sense that well, because it's very difficult to hold them to account. Like, who do you hold account for bad decisions? You know, a committee.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you're right.
Granted, but like by now, either USA Rugby or Rugby Canada, they should have made a good decision by accident by now.
Yeah. Mm.
They should have unintentionally done something positive by now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, sorry, that was my question, wasn't it? So, what's okay? So, moving on to belonging and club identity. What's the one night you'll never forget? The moment you looked around the room and thought, "Wow, this is why I do it."
There's not really one event. I mean, I've been very proud of. I'm very proud of our Rugby World Cup final events. They're always sort of 600 people plus. But when the event's bigger like that, you never really get a moment to like breathe out and stop. It's always afterwards, you know, like you think, oh wow, I just did an event of 500 plus rugby people, and that was great. But at the time, you don't get a chance to reflect on anything because you're 100 miles an hour and tickets and beers and shaking babies and kissing hands. But it's the times for me that the brand really means something and my work really means something are there's a ex-Canadian rugby player called Andrea Burke, and she was part of the up till now the most successful Canada women's 15s of all time, and they lost in the final to England, I think, back in 2014. And I've been friends with her for some time, and she went out to, I think it was Oakville Crusaders. I think it was Oakville Crusaders in Ontario, and she was talking to the players there, which she was training, and she said that she knew the guy that did the 99 Social, and she said, "Oh, they all think I'm a celebrity now because I know the 99 Social guy. They don't care about my rugby medals anymore. They're all worried about the fact that I know you." And more recently, I had a friend that I hadn't seen for some years who lives in Kuala Lumpur, and his son had been playing for Sedberg School in the UK, and has just moved to UBC Rugby. And I said to him, like, and he's going to be coming backwards and forwards to Vancouver. I said, "Oh, well, if he has any trouble or he's stuck for anything, make sure you give him my number, my email, like to get hold of me in case of emergencies, because obviously I'm local." And so he said, "Oh, I really appreciate that. Thanks a lot." So he gave him my details, and he's like, "Your friend does the 99 Social," and he's like, "Yeah, why?" He's like, "Oh, all my friends follow him in the UK. Like, we love his stuff." Like, and so we did a profile for him on the Instagram page, and for congratulating him on his move to the UBC. And so his dad feels like a hero now. He's like, "Thanks for giving me cred with my kid." Usually he just thinks I'm the old stick in the mud, but he actually thinks I've got cool friends now. So
yeah, absolutely.
just hearing things like that is makes, and it always seems to come at just the right time, just when you're about to press delete on the Instagram page or the Facebook page because like you've had enough. That something like that comes in, and or you find out sort of someone's having their 5th wedding anniversary, and they met at one of your rugby games or something. It's just those are the times when they keep me going and they keep me doing the stuff.
Absolutely. That's
very cool. It just shows you the breadth of your reach globally. Kuala Lumpur, UK. So that's great.
Lessons for leaders. What's the mistake you'll never make again, and what system do you have in place to make sure it doesn't happen twice, if at all?
Well, there was this podcast I was on. Just kidding.
Wow, that's pretty harsh.
I'm just kidding. I think on the offset was to pick my venues. Well, there was 2 things. It was to pick my venues carefully. You can't just do these events in any pub. They have to have the correct screens. They have to give some sort of passion for their food and their beer lineup, and the staff and the management have to be positive about the events, which are all the things I wanted when I started. That I kind of, after about 2 or 3 years, I in my hunger to expand and push further. I think I maybe did some events in pubs that weren't the right fit. So that's in my particular case, to be selective about your venue, not in a hurry to place these events just anywhere. Also, I didn't really start pushing the social media side of it until just before the pandemic. I'd always used Facebook to promote the events, but hadn't really pushed the Facebook page and hadn't really been any sort of a force on Instagram. And as we know, during the pandemic, we all had a bit more time on our hands. So I got the Instagram page going, and I never really liked the logo that we had. So I got the logo redesigned, and I started doing the social media. And the strange thing is, the strange lesson in selling and the strange lesson in marketing is to not market. It's just to be you and just be your authentic self and show your authentic passion for whatever the topic is. And so I kind of, obviously we still make posters for the events and we put them out, and I chase people up, you coming this Friday, things like that. But the majority of the time, I'm just creating my content and letting people know that this content and this brand facilitates the showing of events as well, and encourage people to have their own idea to turn up. That ballooned my following from the 5,000-6,000 on Instagram we have up till like 30,000 now, which isn't Taylor Swift numbers, but I'm 30,000 in the rugby union community is quite good. I think only Rugby Canada themselves have higher numbers than me in Canada.
Wow.
For social media for rugby. And so those are the two lessons, I guess. Is to once you've got a brand you're happy with and you've got a setup you're happy with, is to be selective on your partners and your venues, and market through authenticity and just a natural following.
Yeah.
Oh, very good. So we're through to our quick fire question round. So
Oh no.
off the top of your head, no pressure. Best rugby pub you've ever set foot in?
So I will say it's not anymore because the stadium's gone, but the Three Guineas was the place when I was at my height of my rugby fandom and going to games every week in my London Irish days. But the Walkabout brand in the UK used to do rugby days really, really well. But now, after my research, this question, this is quick fire round. Can't do anything quick fire with me in my mouth. Like you can't like not mention pubs like the Falter in Fallback, the Cabbage Patch, and the Three Sisters in Scotland. Though ironically, I've never been to any of those pubs, but what they do for rugby fans is astronomical. So you can't. So that's my quick fire answer. Sorry.
Fair play. One match you'd relive in a packed bar, sound turned all the way up.
The Ireland All Blacks game 2016, 100%. So I managed to get myself a press pass for that game, and went to all the interviews and things like that, and all the captain's runs, and a massive experience for me. And I'd never swap it for anything in the world. But in order to truly get value that weekend, I would have had to be two people. I wanted to be in the stands with a dozen Guinness in me, and so I'd love to watch that game again, but in a packed pub, and actually be able to have a pie and have a bunch of beers and watch it on a big screen, rather than having to be professional without a drop of alcohol in me.
Fair play. One player you'd want to do your jersey presentation?
Oh wow. As if one of you two could get this under 5 people. I'm going to have 2 women and 2 men, and 2 women are either old Rocky there, Rocky Clark, the England prop, or Portia Woodman. And if it were men, it would be either Topsy Ojo or Brian O'Driscoll.
Good choices. 99 Social in 3 words.
Keep rugby social.
Good one.
3
One
words
person.
as well.
Yeah, good answer. One person.
It's our hashtag. It's our hashtag.
Well, and a memorable one. One person, living or dead, you'd
Yes.
want at the bar with you for a Six Nations final.
He's still very much alive. Probably either a man called Matt Plant, who's a member of Capilano RFC in West Vancouver. He does so much for rugby. Doesn't often get, as we know, many of those people don't often get the credit they deserve. In fact, quite the opposite. People make it hard for them, and when we should lay out a red carpet for people like that. Or a man called Jerry Clayton from Montreal, a member of Beaconsfield Rugby Club. He's just one of these good souls you meet in rugby that, like, not only would he give you the shirt off his back, but if he still needed more, he'd probably peel his skin off as well. We're lucky enough to, as rugby people, to meet these people and in our lives, and those are probably the two. I could probably name 30, but those are the two that initially come to mind.
What would yours be, Fitzy?
Fantastic. Richard Harris. I had the privilege of meeting him once before, and he was a Gary Owen player in Limerick and big Munster fan, and I met him once. Really, really, really interesting guy. Big fan of his work, and I think that would be great crack.
Yeah, mine would be Oliver Reed. So imagine if I met you, Fitzy, Richard Harris, Oliver Reed. The same.
Yeah, it could be a messy evening.
It'd be very messy. I don't think you watch any rugby though. So
I hear Henry Cavill. He's a big England fan, and apparently he's a good crack at a rugby event.
I didn't know that.
Apparently,
Didn't know that.
Old Superman.
Yeah. So right. I mean, that's great. I mean, we loved speaking with you today. I mean, you've shown that like grassroots isn't a slogan; it's a system. Dan gave us a blueprint start with one venue, turn match day into a ritual, give people a reason to belong, and then repeat. If you're listening, the challenge is simple. Call a local pub this week, promise a crowd, deliver an experience. Tag us and Dan when you watch your first party, or when you run your first party, I should say. The future of the game will be built by people who act. Be one of them, be a grassroots supporter. Thank you very much, Dan Tanner.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Absolute pleasure.